dig it, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's some sweet music. I would love to lay some tracks down on that bad boy. That's a good one.
Happy Devil's Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 104. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Scott from the Sunday edition of the Let's Go Devils podcast. So Nick had something come up at the last second, but that's okay. You know how to fill in, Scott. And,
a lot of people say we look alike anyway, so it's like I'm Nick's stunt double, so it's no big deal.
Oh, absolutely. Well, to start at the top of the podcast, from The Athletic, we have a good friend, Corey Masisak. Corey, you're on with Sam and Scott. How are you tonight? Corey, are you there? I think we've lost Corey. Well, my bad. Well, we're off to a great start, right?
Hey, listen, Nick, it's not my fault. I know I'm a stand-in, but no, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. I'm sure you'll get him back on the line in a minute. But I'm, you know what? To be honest with you, I'm very excited about tonight, and thank you for the opportunity. I know it's unfortunate that Nick is not going to be here tonight to be a part of the show, but you know, it's always nice to just be able to sit down and talk some Devils hockey. So. It's a little different for me being on the old Wednesday show. And like I said, it's a big honor. And thank you, Sam, for the call, because I was sitting there on a taxi squad and washing some dishes after dinner there. And all of a sudden I got the call from the big team and I said, oh, all right, coach, I grabbed my gear and here I am. But, you know, we have a lot to discuss tonight, and I'm very interested to hear some of what Corey has to say. You know, we're going to have some really good conversation going on. You can tell that right now what I'm doing is this is called filler, folks. This is called filler. But regardless, you know, the last couple of games we've talked about on the Sunday edition of the podcast. Last night's game not really going our way either. This week is going to be a very interesting week. There's going to be a lot of different things that we're going to be able to cover today. And that's going to be it. So we're going to have a good old-fashioned time here on the State of the Fan Address. And we also want to hear from you, all of our friends out there on the Facebook chat and the YouTube live chat and the Twitter and all those different universes and places that we spread across the universe. So be sure to check in, be sure to chime in, let us know what you think, let us know what's on top of your mind. As Sam's getting everything kind of situated right now, you know, we'll see. These are the things that happen. This is live. This is what happens when you're live. So maybe I'll jump over to the Facebook group and see if we got any of our fans over there just kind of chiming in. But as we're doing that, a few things I want to kind of point out. Number one, oh, there we go. There's the old face. Oh, I see Craig says, what's up? And I see Jalen says, Jalen, come on, man. Do you have to rub it in? Says, we back. I haven't said hi to all my Facebook friends here in a long time. So happy to, oh man. Mike Rossi, what's going on, everybody on the Facebook group? So let us know what's on your mind. Let us know what's going on. You know, last night, like I said, we'll talk about the game while we're waiting for Sam to come back and we're waiting for Corey to jump back on the line. We'll talk a little bit about the game last night. To be honest with you, just from a fan's point of view, sitting there and watching a game, it's been hard this year. Everybody knows that. And from the beginning of the season started off right, and it feels like, you know, once we hit that COVID break, and this is something that we talk about on the Let's Go Devils podcast on, you know, every Sunday. Once we hit that COVID break and things just kind of unraveled after that, you know, you knew this team was going to be selling. You knew this team was not going to be in the market for picking up pieces, but they ended up doing so. And they ended up picking up Siegenthaler. And that's something that we'll be discussing tonight, too, because it's a huge part of what this team is trying to establish and what they're trying to put together. And I feel like Fitzgerald he's moving in the right direction of keeping this squad young. I know there's a lot of people that will disagree with that because they want to say that we need veteran leadership on this team. It's not to say that we don't have veteran leadership. We don't have veterans on this team. But I understand saying, like, you watch Travis Zajac, go up the LIE or wherever over to Long Island, and you feel like a chunk of the team is now missing. Well, to be honest with you, it's going to open up a lot of avenues for a lot of different players that are going to get an opportunity to show themselves, like a Thompson or some of these younger kids that are finally going to get a chance to crack the NHL and take that solo lap, which, by the way, is another thing that I'd be very interested in finding out. And maybe somebody can help us out on the old Facebook group. Sam, I'm holding it together, my friend. I'm holding it together.
You know what stinks?
Oh,
you know what stinks?
Going solo?
Well, it's going stinks solo, but I can't figure out why the phone system doesn't work. Of course, when Nick's not here, that's the one time we need the phone system to work, and we don't have it. And we've got two great guests tonight, as we're streaming live on Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. Like, we're going to get Corey Masisak back. I got to figure out the phone system, because suddenly it stopped working, and I don't know why.
Well, that's what happens, man. It's technology.
Well, you know what?
It's meant to help us.
We're going to do? You know what we're going to do?
We're going to go back solo. We're going to go back solo? Is that what we're going to do?
No. I'm taking everybody with me. So as we're talking, you may not see me.
A little behind the scenes?
Yeah, a little behind the scenes. Just hopefully this time around I don't say any, bad language or anything like that. But hey, by the way, if you haven't gone to pucksandpitchforks.com, you should go. Nick has a lot of great articles up there. I mean,
Nick, he's got a great crew over there. And that, honestly, it's one of those things that every once in a while, like when you're on your Twitter feed, I don't know about anybody else, but Twitter is basically the only thing I use anymore. So I'll go on my Twitter and I'm just kind of going through and scrolling through all the negativity of all the Devils fans just completely bashing this team, and sometimes rightfully so. And then I'll come across one of Nick's articles. I'll pop on and I'll read it. And by the way, Nick didn't pay me to say this. I actually read his articles every time I come across them, and they're good, man. Like, I like the breakdown. Especially when we're approaching that trade deadline, there's a lot of interesting moves that could have happened and a lot of things that people were speculating on, especially Kulikov. Kulikov to me was a very interesting piece. And hopefully we get the phone lines back up, because I would really like to pick the minds of our guests tonight about that whole situation. Go ahead. I feel like you got something. Oh, and now I can't hear you.
Yes, technology. You know what? It's like what we said in our. We actually had a pre-show meeting because this came on last second. Everybody that's watching,
I wasn't kidding when I was washing dishes when his phone call came through.
Yeah, that expect the unexpected and sell what you got. That's the motto tonight. But actually, I found out what the problem was. It was actually a loose cable, so it actually works. But cool. We will get Corey Masisak later in the podcast because we will have Chris Ryan of NJ.com on shortly in about 8 to 10 minutes from now. Sorry about that, folks.
No, it's all good. And you know what? Things happen, and that's why we're live. And speaking of live, I'm going to go to the Facebook Live group because there's a lot of good things going on, especially Mike Rossi is big on the Dogecoin. Big time. He's a big Doge fan, if that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, you know what?
It makes phones work, he says.
You know what? Let me tell you
Bitcoin,
something.
All that stuff, I don't want to get into like a cryptocurrency conversation, but let's just say if you have money in Bitcoin right now, it's good for you.
Yeah, well,
that stuff's going off.
My dream is to own the New Jersey Devils and get that $35 million private jet that we keep on talking about. And
ridiculous.
All I have to say is, hey, if you're not happy with the Devils right now and you want Sam Wu to be the owner of the New Jersey Devils, Beer Baron to be director of scouting, Rebecca Moose Morse,
don't put that pressure on me. I'll just be PR
coach, and Shorts guy as the goalie coach. Just buy Doge. We can all be partners in it and buy this team and win Stanley Cups.
Maybe the most ridiculous owners to be like, well, they traded 6 first-round picks for, and it's like, all right. But looking at the Facebook Live group, there's a lot of good conversation going on because this is the most commented Devils podcast in podcast history, or how I always forget how you say that. But anyways, so Omar says, "What a great acquisition by the Capitals." Talking about Manta, but we're talking about the Devils here, man. We did get a decent. I think Siegenthaler, by the way, is going to pay out. Yeah, I don't know if there's some people that are like, well, he's slow and it doesn't fit the model that Lindy Ruff is playing. We need grit and we need size. And we need somebody to help clear out the front, and that hasn't been happening. And bringing in somebody with the grit and size of Siegenthaler, I think, is a very good move for a third-round pick, which, by the way, is actually a part of the Taylor Hall trade. So if you look at the Taylor Hall trade, we got Siegenthaler, we got Merck Daddy, we got Dawson Mercer, and we got, what's the fourth piece to that? Come on, Sam. What's the fourth ring of that?
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't paying attention.
Come on.
Wait, Dawson Mercer. Wait, you're talking about centerman? Dawson Mercer, Jack Hughes, Nico Heischer.
No.
Oh.
No. What did we get? What did we get from the Taylor Hall trade? We got
Kevin Ball.
We got that's the last piece. So we got Kevin Ball. We got Dawson Mercer. Can we hit the restart? Hit the restart. Just start over. Just start the intro.
We sound like a bunch of idiots. So those that are tuning in, okay, we had a last minute. We had to pull Beer Baron off the taxi squad. We actually have a taxi squad on the Let's Go Devils podcast, State of the Fan Address. At the last second, Nick had something pop up. So we're
trying, Nick. We're trying.
Yeah, we're trying. And of course, I left it as Nick. Don't worry, Nick, we got this. But we're having a little
Steve
fun
says
here.
More beer. Don't worry, Steve. I'm way ahead of you on that one. But
all right, let's
looking back,
let's hit the reset button right now. We got this.
Okay.
We're gonna have Chris Ryan very soon. All right, go Beer Baron.
So, any updates on Bastion and Zaka? And that's from Steve on the Facebook group. And from what I hear, Bastion is close to coming back. He should be coming back soon enough, which is interesting because another dude that we need back in the lineup. He brings size. He brings physicality. Thanks, Michael. Says, love you guys. Just got home. Match go over. Get line A. Well, all right, whatever. I mean, we'll see. But anyways,
let me tell you about Siegenthaler because he didn't play much this year. He looked very rusty.
No, but he's
there. But he's a simple player. And when and I'm not knocking on him, I actually think that's an asset because what the Devils need defensively is one guy to take care of business in front of the crease. And play a simple game and defensively.
Yeah, and what made Kulikov so valuable to the team this year? Let me ask you, what did
steady?
What did Kulikov bring to the table?
He was steady. He was consistent. Okay. He had some skill. And you knew I felt comfortable with Kulikov out there. Every time he was out there, and I feel comfortable when Ty Smith is out there. Never out of position, and when they are out of position, they get back really quickly back to position. Most of the times.
Omar says consistency. That was 100% the word that I was looking for. Is Kulikov brought consistency, and you're right. The Devils have, we have guys that can move the puck, right? And you need somebody that's going to be that stalwart defenseman, somebody that's going to be able to hold it down. Kulikov was filling in that position pretty well. And you're Siegenthaler, I'm sorry. I'm just like, what a weird night. Siegenthaler, hopefully getting the opportunity, will be able to do that. And I'll tell you what, looking at social media, the Capital fans were not happy to see him traded away.
Yeah.
Players on the Capitals were not happy to see him traded away. I'm just saying, like, as a barometer of like how good of a trade will this be, I think this might be one of those sneaky trades that could end up paying off in the long run. I mean, what is he, 23 years old? You know, he's got I'm not sure how many years he has left on, you know, under control or under contract, but you know, Fitzgerald is making this team young, and a team that grows together. I hate to sound so cliche. A team that grows together wins together, Sam. That should be on a t-shirt.
Oh, yeah. And
Trust
you
the
know
process.
you know what? Like, some of the plays that Siegenthaler was out there, I'm like, we got this guy. But after hearing the backstory, like, you know, about him, you know, with the Capitals, there was simply just no room. But as like what you said, that the Capital fans liked him. And
3 years under control. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. So with that said, I'm going to give this guy, hopefully he's on the team next 2 years to develop on his own, because Ken Tanico played a role on the New Jersey Devils other than being one of the almost original Devils. I think he was drafted in '83, was there for a very long time, played every single playoff game, you know, all that kind of stuff up until he retired. When it comes to hockey, it's not like basketball where you can get the big three. Hockey is really
it doesn't work like
sport, and sometimes you need that. You know, you don't fill all three pairings with Norris Trophy winning defensemen.
I mean, that's the dream, right?
Yeah, that's the dream. No, some D guys play a certain role, and they do it, and they shut the other team down. Sometimes it's, you know, when you're
it doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't always have to look pretty. That's part of it. A lot of people like the flash, and you know, Ty Smith is our flash. He's our Scott Niedermayer. You know, we need somebody that's going to, like you said, bring, oh man, the solo act again. We need somebody that's going to bring, you know, a steady presence on defense. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of people that are talking about, you know, the fact that Murray didn't get moved, and you know, there's a lot of people. Jalen with Adam Fox. Yes, Jalen, we know Adam Fox is great. Okay, you don't have to keep rubbing it in. He's fantastic, and I bet Carolina's kicking themselves in the pants for letting him go. But anyways, you build, you know, the Lou Lamoriello model used to be build from the goaltender out. And I feel like, you know, this team up front, we're still missing pieces. On the back end, obviously, we're missing pieces. So it's not like you can just plug in two defensemen and its team is fixed. You know, there's a couple of different holes. There's promise. There's a lot of promise. And that's the one thing that I can say, that you look at the team and you're like, oh, they're just so close to finishing. And hopefully, you know, being able to talk to our guests coming up, they'll be able to kind of shed a little bit more light on that, because the truth of the matter is, when you look at the Devils, you can kind of pinpoint as a fan, you know, what you think that this team needs. But that's the problem. As fans, we're always like, oh, just go get Patrick Laine. Perfect. Boom. Jack has a winger that can score. That's a sniper. Problem solved. But it's not always that easy. There's so many different things, and there's so many different aspects that go into it. You know, team chemistry, all these other things. Like, you could bring in a guy like Patrick Laine, who has the pedigree and who can put up the numbers. But when you put him on the ice with the team that we have out there, maybe he doesn't work out. But like I said, that's more of a fan opinion than somebody that maybe be in the a little bit whatever.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's take two with the phone system. Our next guest, I subscribe to NJ.com's text message alerts. I get Chris Ryan's text message. It's been unbelievable having that as a tool doing these podcasts. I highly recommend you subscribe. It's $4.95 a month. They just charged my credit card yesterday. It's worth every penny. Welcoming to the State of the Fan address, Chris Ryan. Chris, you're on with Scott and Sam. How are you tonight?
I'm good, guys. How's it going?
Great.
Good. Thanks for coming on.
Happy to anytime.
So it's been 1 week since the Palmieri Zajac trade, and now we know what the full trade market looks like. Does your opinion change on the trade right now?
Not drastically. At the time, I thought it was a decent deal for the Devils. I kind of said to a few people I didn't really expect many first-round picks to go at the deadline. I wouldn't have been shocked if the Devils had only one of the two that got moved. It ended up being four. So I think getting a first-round pick for Palmieri was a good business for Fitzgerald in a year where not too many teams were keen on moving that kind of asset right now. So I think all things considered, that's really the only tangible thing they got back of the deal, but it's the one thing they needed to get. So I think all things considered, it's a pretty good deal for the Devils for two guys that are going to be free agents at the end of the year.
Now, just kind of a question in regards to Palmieri and Zajac. Could you foresee them, possibly coming back to the Devils, or is this kind of like an Andy Green situation where once they're gone, they're pretty much gone onto the next level, which is the Devils of the Long Island? I mean, the Islanders.
I could see a scenario where one or maybe even both comes back, just because, especially with Palmieri, the Islanders don't really have the greatest cap situation going into the summer, being able to extend it and give him the money that he wants. So I wouldn't be stunned if he ends up making it to free agency, and then it's going to depend on where the Devils are at, just what they're looking to try to do in the short term and what he's looking for in his next contract. So I don't know about Zajac. I'm not sure what he wants to do beyond this year in terms of his career. And I mean, I know he's going to end up living in New Jersey probably for the rest of his life because his kids are here, and he said he wants to hang around even when he's done playing hockey. So I think there's a chance for both. But again, wouldn't be stunned if either took another route and moved on just fully after the year.
So the other question that I have, and I mean, we were just actually talking about this not too long ago. The Devils made that trade with the Washington Capitol for Jonas Siegenthaler. And to the fans that might not know a lot about him, I mean, first of all, it's pretty exciting that the fact that we actually made a move to bring a piece in. What is your opinion of Siegenthaler, and what do you think he can bring to the team?
If you're looking at it from the Devils' perspective, you hope this turns into the Marco Mueller trade where you actually get someone who can be an everyday NHL player, because obviously that never really happened with Mueller, who turned into a seventh defenseman, then ultimately was let go before this year. He's not going to be a top pairing, maybe not even a top four guy. He's not the greatest puck mover. He's more defensively minded, but given what they have on the blue line with guys like David Segerson, Ty Smith, even Will Butcher, guys that can move the puck, you need another guy, a big guy like him that can kind of complement them in that way. And if things work out well and he can turn that playing time into a meaningful role, he's certainly someone who could be part of that lineup for the next couple of years and at least give them meaningful minutes on the penalty kill and things like that.
The Devils traded Kulikov and lost Vatanen to waivers. Did you think that there would be more transactions, or
just from the way Tom Fitzgerald talked about it after the Palmieri Zajac deal last week? He didn't sound too interested in trading all of the three UFA defensemen, meaning Kulikov, Vatanen, and Murray. If he had the right deals for any of them, I think he would have done it. But I think he was more than happy to keep one or two of them around, and that's the way it worked out. So I think, he wasn't going to give away Brian Murray just for anything. And I'm a little surprised there wasn't a little bit more of a trade market for him, just given that he's, a former number 2 overall pick, a guy that's played top 10 minutes for the Blue Jackets in recent years. So I think that's probably about on par for what was expected going into Monday. Obviously, Fitzgerald didn't intend to lose Vatanen on waivers to the Stars for nothing, but there was no other trade to be had unless he went through waivers first. So just the way it happened to work out there, and he'll get a chance with a different team, and it opens the opportunity for another player on the Devils. But I think he kind of went as many would have expected.
So the trade with or the trade that we got for Kulikov, were you surprised at what they got back? Because there was speculation that the Devils would try to get a little bit more for him, and that he might be a little bit more valuable. Were you surprised with the conditional pick that we got back from the Oilers?
A little bit. I thought maybe he could fetch just a third rounder straight away without the condition on it. Especially given that he's played pretty well this year. He's a very good defender. So, teams value that at this point of the year when they're trying to add a little insurance on their blue line. And considering his cap hit was only $1.15 million, I would have thought that would have been pretty appealing for teams that, are tight on money and could use a player like him. But I don't think it's a terrible return. I don't think it's, that drastically different from what we thought it might be. But at this point, and if it was when one playoff round, it moves to a third. So just ended up being what it was for the Devils, and could be something that Fitzgerald gets a little bit better return on.
Chris, the press conference with Fitzgerald on Monday revealed a lot, but did anything specifically stand out to you during that press conference?
A couple things did. The first was just his praise for Ty Smith. I mean, we've seen how well he's played this year in his rookie year. Probably even better than even the best expectations for him. He's played in pretty much every role other than the penalty kill, and he's handled pretty big minutes, which is very tough to do for a 20-year-old defenseman in this league. And he made it pretty clear that Smith is a big part of if you want to call it the core going forward. At this point, it really only been Nico and Jack in terms of those core franchise players, and now Smith is kind of in that conversation too in terms of how they want to build. The other thing was kind of how we talked about Will Butcher and Andreas Johnson, just how they played this year. We've seen Johnson kind of struggle to put up points, and hasn't really clicked during his first season with the Devils. But Fitzgerald was pretty praiseworthy of him, just in terms of how he's worked and just still the hopes they have for what he can bring. Maybe not even this year, but beyond. So. A little surprised that, he's still so high on him, and it just kind of gives you a perspective of what he's thinking about where he stands right now.
Yeah, and one thing that really stood in that press conference was the Palmieri and Zajac trade. I don't know if it was that press conference or before, saying that, I want the 32nd pick. Like, he really had high praise for Zajac and Palmieri going to the Islanders, that he would want these two guys to win the Stanley Cup. What were your thoughts on that? It's not too often a GM would say something like that.
No, it's not. And I'm from listening to him talk this year and, just getting to know him in the past few years, even before he became a full-time GM. He's sincere when he says that, and he has a lot of respect for both those guys. They've been here for his entire tenure, essentially, and he wants to see them go win a cup with a different team, and I think generally means that. And Zajac could have easily chose to stick around, and he talked to Fitzgerald over the course of the weeks before the trade, and ultimately said, "Yeah, I want a chance to go win a cup." And Fitzgerald, that was kind of the one thing this was last Wednesday that stood out. He said, we as an organization owed it to Zajac to give him that opportunity.
So with these, and this is kind of something that we were talking about before, with these moves of, seeing Palmieri go, seeing Zajac go, do you feel, in your opinion, that the Devils are lacking now at this point? Because they're in NHL history, I think they might be tied with, I can't remember off the top of my head, tied with another team for the top youngest team to be on ice. So do you feel that they're missing a veteran presence in this locker room right now, or is it just kind of like at this point, let the kids play and kind of get the, some of the younger guys coming up from Binghamton, give them some experience? Or do you feel like they need that Zajac or that Palmieri in the lineup for next year?
I think had this been a normal year and you had, 6-7 weeks left after the trade deadline where you're still playing games and, these games mean something for these kids and their development, I think it would be a little bit more of a big deal. But even at this point, you're less than a month away before the end of the season, and just let the kids play. And I think when you go into the off, I don't think you're going to see Fitzgerald bring this same group back and, not try to infuse a little bit more of a veteran presence around Nico Heischer and Jack Hughes. So I think that will be addressed in the offseason, whether that be, try to go back and get a Palmieri and bring him back, or look elsewhere in a trade or something like that. But I think that will change before they play a game in the fall.
And I just have one last one. I'm so sorry, Sam. I know I cut Sam off. I apologize. I know there's been some talk about Alexander Holtz. Is there any inkling that he would make an appearance this season that you might know of?
They've said they're working on trying to get him signed. So that's their full intention, to try to get that done as soon as possible, whether that be tomorrow or in the coming week or two. And if they can get him over here and get him in some games, whether that be with the NHL team or with Binghamton in the AHL, they're definitely going to do it. The only issue is kind of the timing with everything right now, because obviously he would have to sign, get his work visa, come over and quarantine for a week. And we saw how long that took for Jesper Bratt coming over from Sweden in January. He was a guy who had already been through the process one time. So if it doesn't happen, maybe in the next week, I don't think there's going to be really time for Holtz to get in games after clearing all those hurdles. But we'll see. Maybe things have cleared up a little bit in terms of, the bureaucratic red tape and how long this stuff takes. But they definitely want to get him here. They would love to get him to a game or two before the end of the season. But the biggest thing is, trying to get him ready and gear him up to be in the NHL as soon as next year.
Chris, I said in the beginning that I'm a big fan of the text message thing that you do at NJ.com. I subscribe to it. One of the biggest things I like is when you do the Q&A. Is there any Q&As coming in the near future on the horizon? Or do you have any articles you possibly could be plug? You could plug, that you're writing right now?
We'll definitely have a Q&A soon. I try to do them every couple of weeks. This has been a weird year with how busy the season has been. But, now that the trade deadline is done and we've got a little bit to look forward to the end of the year, I definitely want to get another one in there. But, you mentioned it's a great community of Devils fans. And, I talk back and forth with them, a bunch of them every day. And, it's just a lot of fun to hear from them, answer questions. And it's a little more personal than Twitter, where you're not going to just screaming into the void, and you can, have a little more conversation. But in terms of other work we're doing, obviously we're, trying to gear up for some of the important things coming up in the off season. We want to see how some of these younger players do in the final weeks of the season. And then the big thing I want to hopefully do in the coming week is just a look at how the expansion draft could impact them now, because, Palmieri and Zajac were in the past, part of that conversation. Now they're gone. So a little more flexibility for the Devils. And I'm kind of interested to sit down with it and see how things might work out.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for coming on. And, just by the way, we are across the street now at Todd's Lounge 973, the former PJ Ryan's. Come out sometime and we'll take you out to lunch.
Appreciate it, guys. I'll take you up on that offer.
All right, great. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, thanks, guys.
That is Chris Ryan of NJ.com. Subscribe to his text messaging. I'm telling you. It's like
it is great.
People ask me what's going on, and I'll be honest, I'm not going to pretend like I know. I just subscribe, and then I look like a genius. And then of course I like to cite where I get it from. I say, oh no, I got Chris's text messages. As if I have an insider, but that's what it is. Go to NJ.com, subscribe. Yeah,
he is an insider. I find there's a lot of things too that I found very interesting. I wish we had a little bit more time, because as he kind of was talking about a few of the things that he wants to, or he was teasing that's going to be coming out soon. There's a lot of aspects to this expansion draft that we kind of joke about, or we talk about, on Sunday on the Let's Go Devils podcast every Sunday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and across all many different platforms. But we talk about it all the time, like, what this expansion draft is going to do, and what the Devils are going to have to do to, or who they're going to expose to the expansion draft. So You know what? I'm looking forward to this article because I'm really, really curious to see what this team is and what they have up their sleeve.
Oh yeah, I mean, expansion drafts is a unique thing. It doesn't happen too often.
Thank you, Steve.
And when it does, it's like, who's the odd player out? You know.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah. Everybody's like, nice plug, and I'm like, hey, you gotta put it in there somewhere, you know.
Yeah. And while we're at it, and the Woo Report anytime during the day when I feel like I want a podcast. The Woo Report, the opinions of Sam Woo. Anyway,
that's right.
But yeah, so I'm gonna try to get Corey Masisak back. He was I asked him, I was like, I'm so sorry. Will you have some time? You know, because when you do these kind of schedulings, you want to be punctual, and you also want to have your equipment working at the same time. But we had a couple mishaps, but we're winging it like we always do every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for the Let's Get Those podcast.
That's
State
right,
of the Fan
man.
Address. Yeah, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern every Wednesdays. Anyway, all right. So let me get Corey, Beer Baron, and
go ahead. Yeah, do your thing. I'll take the stage. I'll take the stage.
Yeah.
I'm looking at our Facebook Live group right now, and I'm just kind of going through all these different comments that we have going on right now. And Steve on the Facebook Live, who's been very active tonight, brought up Butcher, PK, and Janssen. Would anybody cry if any of the above were taken or sent over to Seattle? So there's a lot of different options that this team can go with when when the expansion draft happens. And there's a lot of teams, and this is what's going to be very important. There's a lot of teams that are going to have situations where they're going to have to unload a player because they don't want to, which kind of doesn't make sense to me. They're like, we don't want to expose this player to Seattle, so we'll trade him. Like, apparently Siegenthaler, they're like, we don't have room for him, but we don't want to just give him away for nothing. I guess that's the point. Like, we don't want to give him away for nothing, so we'll at least get a third-round pick for it. Now that I'm speaking about it, it makes more sense. But anyways, so there's a lot of different options that the Devils are going to be able to do for the expansion draft. But there's so many different things that are going to happen between now and the end of the season that are going to be intriguing about this team. We might not win the Devils might not win every single game from here until the end of the season, which if they did would be pretty amazing and then put them into the fourth spot, I think. Maybe. But even if they get to that point, from now until the end of the season, it's the opportunity to start bringing up young kids, bring up a foot. I know there's a lot of people that are like, bring up ball. No, let him mature in the AHL for a little bit longer now, especially now that you have a Siegenthaler. So you have kind of like, the Kevin Ball, 2.0. Let Kevin Ball develop in the AHL for a year or two. But there's other opportunities for other kids to come up and actually play into the NHL. Give them a couple of games. I know there's a lot of speculation of like who could possibly crack the lineup. And listen, Graham Clark, a kid that's been doing pretty well down in Binghamton, or as we call it, Newark East, because they're in Newark. He might have a chance to come up to the big club. Foot, I see Omar in the Facebook group is saying Foot. I think Foot should have a chance to come up and try to do something. At this point, why not, right? We're already in this situation where we're not going to really win a lot of games. Who knows how long Pavel Zacha is going to be out? Give a couple of these kids the opportunity. I mean, the only downside of this is, Bastian coming back is going to take a spot away. So you could assume that that's probably Tice Thompson's going to go back down to get put down into the AHL, or maybe, I don't know, maybe even Maltsev. But I mean, there's pieces to this team that can be kind of switched out for some of the younger players that are down there in Binghamton, just to give them a look. Sometimes you get a kid that comes up and they do a lot of great things, and you're like, all right, cool. Now we know what we have. This is great. We give them a little taste of the big club. And if you look at the rest of the schedule, it's not an easy schedule. So whoever you're bringing up, you're going to kind of throw them into the fire of like, hey, we're not going to be playing the Sabres for like 10 games in a row. You're going to be playing some pretty decent competition. So this is the time of year. This is the type of season. Don't look at the wins and losses anymore, because at this point, it's all about development, making sure that the team is taking strides in the right direction. I got to take a nap after this one. I'll tell you what. I'm not used to that solo stuff. I know you do the Woo Report all the time. I'm not used to that.
Yeah, well, you know what? You're getting some practice. You get practice. So, and I'm getting practice putting in the phone lines.
Yeah.
What you're saying?
No, I was just going to say Ray Leo on the Facebook group just said that there's a rumor, and we never want to speculate on rumors, but he said there's a rumor that Zacha has a torn ACL, and I really, really hope that's not the case. But
let's not speculate.
Let's not speculate. Let's not put that. Don't put that voodoo on me.
Yeah, we don't do that on this podcast. So
don't put that voodoo on me, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's not the case. All right, so take two. Sorry about that before, but now we have the infamous Corey Masisak from The Athletic. Subscribe to The Athletic, because I'll tell you what, that's where I get my information as well. Anything
that's
about
right.
The New Jersey Devils. Corey, you're on with Scott and Sam. How are you tonight?
Apparently I'm infamous. I think you're the first person ever to put that in front of my name, so thank you for that.
I got to change it up.
Infamous.
Yeah. Normally we say that good friend of the podcast. If the rule is, if you've been on the podcast twice, you're all of a sudden like great friends with us. But I wanted to change it up because, anyway.
Why not? Yeah. One of those days.
So, Corey, you wrote a piece on the Devils rebuild and the ideal lineup position by position. I read through that before the podcast. Which one was the most intriguing position to you?
That's a good question. I think it's probably the I would say maybe the two open spots on defense. I guess kind of the general idea is like, okay, where do we think they actually have guys that are probably locked into roles where they're going to be in, not necessarily next season, but 2, 3, 4 season, whenever. Like I think the way I prefaced it was like whenever they start a postseason at home. Like if you're starting a postseason at home, that means you're a top 4 seed in the conference, and you're probably one of the 6 to 8 teams that people think can win the cup. So, what's the lineup going to look like then? And I think they have a bunch of different interesting, intriguing options in a lot of places, but I don't. They're definitely if you're I don't think this is like breaking news or anything, but if you're looking for what they still need to figure out and what they need to find that might not be inside the system currently, it's, 1 or 2 top 4 defensemen, and then maybe, 1 or 2 top 6 forwards too, with maybe a little bit more confidence that there are some top 6 forwards coming that, have been drafted recently. But I just think that honestly, the thing that fascinates me the most about the defense is can they find a legitimate number one, a guy that is always considered one of the 10 or 15 best in the league. Those guys are obviously really hard to come by, but just getting that one guy changes everything about this. You could, if they could add Victor Hedman tomorrow, they would suddenly be a much different franchise. And obviously they can't, but whether it's the guy that they're going to draft with their first pick in 2021, or if it's somebody that shakes free. I mean, some of those guys do get moved, but it's just a matter of finding the right one and finding the right opportunity. I think that's because I think Damon Severson and Ty Smith are both going to fit in the top 4 comfortably over the next several years. It's just a matter of who are going to be the 2 guys that join them, and and also sort of where does everyone fit? Will Damon and Ty play together on the second pair? Will they actually be able to find 2 guys better than both of them? That might be hard to do. But if they find a
a righty that fits with Ty and a lefty that fits with Damon. I just think all of that is, one of the on a big picture level, that's probably the most fascinating thing about this team over the next couple of years.
So in the short term, speaking of the defense, is there anybody that you could project possibly cracking the lineup that we haven't seen yet, like a Riley Walsh or Kevin Ball? I know Kevin Ball is still a work in progress, but is there anybody in the AHL side of it that you could see possibly making it to the big club for the remainder of the season, or for at least the last 10-15?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's definitely been. Definitely seems like there's like a groundswell of like, hey, they need to get these guys. I mean, like, I think first off, like, they need to see as much as they can see from Jonas Siegenthaler. So that's one of the sort of the two open spots that they had. It's sort of locked up. And honestly, they do need to. They need to let Will Butcher play for 15 games and see if he's part of the future or not. I mean, I do think that. One of the things that I've found pretty fascinating about Lindy Ruff is that he really hasn't danced around the idea of some of these guys who, 12 months ago you might have said, like, well, okay, obviously because of their age and their contracts, they're going to be part of this deal, if it's not for the next couple of years or the next 5 years or whatever. But like, he hasn't been afraid to say that, like, Will Butcher needs to figure out they need to figure out if Will Butcher is part of the future or not. And he has, and it was the same thing. He said something kind of similar with Andreas Janssen too. But yeah, so I mean, I think if you look at it, like, they need to play those two guys as much as they can over the final 15 games of the season. Then I think, I mean, that doesn't really leave room for anyone else right now, but obviously there could be an injury. And if there is an injury, then I would think, one of those guys is going to get a chance. The only thing is, like, I mean, none of them, I don't know what's going to happen with Colton White. If he's ever going to get a real chance to get more than a couple of games here or there, but like, they have the 4 rookies down there, and like, none of them have played more than 20 games of professional hockey. And it just, like, we could talk about that with Nolan Foote too. Like, what about Nolan Foote? But like, it's just the idea that, like, you're going to call these guys up after playing 20 games as a professional. Especially with the defenseman, that seems. I mean, obviously Ty skipped the AHL, but Ty is the exception to the rule, and they probably would have wanted all of these guys to play 50, 60, 100 games down there before they're ready, or before they want to bring them up. So, I mean, I think a lot of teams are probably in the same boat with this, though. Like, this is just like the idea of, like, okay, this is how we do things. Is over the next year or two. You're just not going to be able to look at you're not going to be able to look at their Hockey DB page and say, okay, they've played enough games now. Like, maybe the way the weird things have gone the last 2 years, it's just going to be time to go for one of them, like, say at the start of next year. But I mean, if I had to pick one of those guys out, I don't know. I mean, I think Riley Walsh probably has. I haven't watched a lot of their games, but I've been trying to pay attention as much as I can. It seems like. Maybe it's changed over the past few games, but at one point it seemed like he was playing the best of the bunch. I think Nikita Hachik has been sort of the most steady of the bunch. So maybe if it's just for a couple games and they just need somebody to come up and play 12 minutes, maybe it's him. But yeah, I would say that's probably. I guess I go with him. He's probably the most likely of the 4 to play this year. I wouldn't say that he has the highest upside of the 4, but he's maybe the one that's. He definitely has played the most, going back the last couple of years. Let's go with him.
So, kind of moving on to, like, the trade side of things, because we were talking about this before with Chris Ryan about, the different trades, especially the Palmieri Zajac trade and the kind of different aspects of that. But being a week from that trade and seeing just how the rest of the trade market played out, how do you think the Devils did? Like, I hate giving grades because sometimes, in my opinion, trades at the forefront, you could be like, oh, they get an A+, and then like 2 years later, they're like, that's an F-. So, but for the sake of argument, how do you feel? How do you feel like they did for now?
Right. I'm honestly, I think you can just look at last year, right? Like, I think the reviews were very mixed on the Taylor Hall trade. And I think I would hope that most people feel much better about that trade now that Dawson Mercer is part of it.
Definitely.
You know, process-wise, the Blake Coleman deal was an absolute slam dunk. Everyone around the league, it was a slam dunk. You get 2 first-round picks essentially. We had no idea the whole thing was Vancouver. I mean, they were literally, just percentage points away from that being an even higher pick in the draft. But anyway, but now if we'll see what happens with Shakir, and if he doesn't pan out, then 5 years from now that trade won't look as good as it did the day of. So anyway, I think look, like, let's just start, like, to me the process is the most important thing at the beginning, and then we'll worry about the return years down the road or whatever. I think Tom Fitzgerald did at a minimum he did fine, and possibly he did good. let's put it that way.
That's a good way to put it.
I think, it's. I mean, I've seen people say that they didn't get nearly enough or whatever. That's like, they got a first-round pick for Kyle Palmieri, and maybe yes, they probably would have gotten more for him if they had traded him a year ago in a similar fashion to Blake Coleman, but they didn't. That's a different deal. I don't know if they would have been able to get more for him if they held on a few more days. Like, you get like little, like, tea leaves here and there and snippets of reporting. Like, someone reported that, Lou Lamoriello was considering Taylor Hall or Kyle Palmieri for their first round pick, and the Devils threw in Zajac, put them over the line. So, if the Islanders had done that deal with Buffalo, does that mean that there is no first round pick for Kyle? And so, I just think that, like, people's, like, sort of concerns about the 2021 draft class and all that aside, I just think that, just getting a first round pick for Kyle, and he admittedly wasn't as playing as well. I don't know if he had 14 goals instead of 7, like, how much that would have drastically changed his stock. And then the other thing is that, I mean, there were only 2 other first round picks moved, and they were both, they were both part of, like, a money laundering deal, right? Like, where there was a third team. I don't know. That's
the perfect way of putting that.
One for, right. I mean, if you could have somehow traded Palmieri to a team and he only cost them $1 million instead of 2, would that have, again, I think you're just sort of picking, picking it here. And I think that just in general, like, that was, like I said, I reached a bunch of people after the trade to find out, like, hey, do you think they got enough? Should they have gotten one of the Islanders prospects and a second-round pick instead? And I think, like I said, pretty much everybody that I talked to said that the first was the thing to get, and that they thought that he got the right thing. So,
yeah. So, and kind of like in retrospect too, if you look at the Kulikov trade, because we were just talking about this with Chris Ryan as well, is, a lot of people were starting to speculate that Kulikov was going to get a decent return, and I not to say who it was, but I'll say that there was a few people that were saying that you could possibly even fetch a second-round pick for Kulikov because people were going to be that desperate, or teams were going to be that desperate. Were you surprised in the return of Dmitry Kulikov, or were you kind of like, hey, yeah, it makes sense?
I was mildly surprised the minute that I saw the return, and then by the end of the day, not surprised at all, I guess, if that's the right way to put it. Like, the market just wasn't. I mean, it's in a normal non-pandemic, non-cap freeze year, guys like John Merrill and Patrick Nemeth and Dmitry Kulikov, like, they go for second or third round picks depending on the situation. And, like, I think Dmitry Kulikov played well enough for the Devils this year to warrant, in a normal year, somebody maybe even saying, like, look, we need this guy. Let's give up a second round pick. I mean, look, if the Devils could get a second round pick for Andy Green, they could have, maybe in a different year. But that just wasn't out there. Like, there was, I think Brandon Montour went for a third round pick, and people thought that was an overpay, or some people thought that was an overpay. Mike Riley went for a third, but he's got another year left on his deal, so that doesn't really count. And, like, I thought that those, like, Kulikov and John Merrill, were 2 guys that both, they're very similar players. Like they're defensive-minded guys who, can play as like your number 4 in a pinch, but are probably a third pairing guy on a good team. And they've both had really solid years for non-playoff teams. And, one went for a 2021 fifth and the other one went for a 2022 fourth. So those are about the same in value. So I think that's kind of where things were.
Corey, what should the Devils down the stretch, towards the end of the season, hope to see from Nico Hischier?
Did he place? I think I don't think it's 15 games. So I think the number one thing is for him to play 15 games. If he has 3 points in the 15 games, I'm sure people are going to panic, but I don't know. It just, everything about this season has been so weird and wacky and out of this world. And I've felt like all along, basically since the day that the news broke that they were going to have they were running through a COVID outbreak, that like this idea of trying to figure out like what, how much progress is Mackenzie Blackwood making, or how much progress is this guy? And then you throw in all of the issues that Nico has had this year. I think they just, I'm sure like in an ideal scenario, he would, maybe take a couple more games to get back on his feet and play really well down the stretch. And maybe like you find something with him and one of the wingers that like just says, hey, let's stick with this for a while. But I don't know. I look back to like last year, like you look at what happened after the deadline last year. You had this one line that just caught fire together. Brat and Zaka and Gusev, and like none of that didn't really carry over to this year. Maybe I guess Brat and Zaka had some decent chemistry together, but like it just, I don't know. I think that there's probably too much emphasis put on what happens in the last 10 or 15 games for a non-playoff team in the moment, because it feels like people should care about what happens like in these games. I think you just want the players to play well, and so sorry. Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing that I'm sure that I think that Lindy Ruff wants to see is he just wants to see what this looks like when, Jack isn't out there on an island by himself. Like if Nico can play well, if it's just for the last 5 or 6 games, like to have the two of them and to be able to roll them. Like I envision a scenario where like they just have a couple of nights at the end of the year where both of those guys are going, and like and Lindy likes to do that sometimes, where if there's 2 lines going, he'll roll them like 2 or 3 times in a row together, and just to see what that looks like when it's those 2 guys, leading to the top 2 lines and they get going. And so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just for him to stay healthy and just basically get to the off season with whatever it is, 21 games instead of 6 would be are the top 2 things.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And then the last question for me, and first of all, I want to say thank you very much for coming on tonight and for taking your time. And we apologize for what happened before, but the whole situation that's been going on with this team, and just kind of like how they've been playing, and the defensive structure and everything that's been going on. I've been hearing a lot of criticism of Mackenzie Blackwood, and I know there's a lot of people that have kind of always compared Blackwood with Hart, and there's this this ongoing conversation of like, well, who's better? Is Hart better, or is Blackwood better? Do you feel like Mackenzie Blackwood deserves a lot of the criticism or a lot of the negativity that's going his way right now, with the way this this weird season has been going?
No, not really. I was just looking at something about him and Hart the other day, and I remembered that I had written a story about them. I guess it would be 2 summers ago. I completely forgot. Like they were called up on the same day. Like of all the other things all the other obvious reasons why they're going to spend the next 12 years of their careers being compared to each other, like the fact that they were called up like 17 minutes apart to start their NHL careers is like perfect. But Yeah, no, I mean, look, Carter Hart is not this bad. I think I'm probably the 387,000th medium member to say that over the last month. He's going to be fine, probably. um, and McKenzie is fine. Like, I don't know. I mean, he, I mentioned him earlier. Like, I don't know. He had one of the worst. He had one of the worst cases of COVID. Like, he admitted that it was basically 21 full days after he tested positive that he still, didn't feel like himself. And they played, he played a game like 3 days after. I mean, I'm just thinking about obviously all this stuff has happened with Vancouver and what JT Miller said today. And it just, every other word that came out of his mouth just reminded me of the Devils they had players, even the guys who didn't get sick or didn't test positive, they didn't do anything for 2 weeks. And then they had one practice and then they played. And I think maybe one of the worst things that happened for Devils fans and for even the NHL at large, the fact that the Devils and I think the Sabres did this too. There was 3 or 4 teams that all had COVID pauses, and they all came back and played. They won games. The Devils won their first 2 games, and honestly, that game that they played against Boston, the second one was probably their best game of the season. That was turns out that was probably Boston just taking the night off, but all of this stuff, we didn't know at the time that a week later or 10 days later, they were all going to, probably still feel like crap. So I don't know. I mean, I think he has been, he's had 3 or 4, he had kind of a funk where, I think I wrote something about this where he's, this is his 3rd year in the NHL and he's just had a 5-game funk every year. And so 5 or 6 games. So, moving forward, if he can, cut that down or maybe just not have one of those 1 year, he might have a great year. But just generally speaking, there've been, I don't know. I was looking at some numbers the other day. I think this is actually the first season in a while where the goaltending has just been fine. It hasn't been, overall, there isn't, I think sometimes there's, you can look at that 2017-18 season and say, that maybe there were some misevaluation of the players because the goaltending was so good. That can happen, right? Where, everybody's numbers look good, goalie stopping all the shots. So, I think it's just been, he's been fine. He's sort of, in using a starting pitcher's term, he's taking the ball whenever they've asked him to, and it some, maybe after the COVID thing, maybe they asked him to a little too much because they were still trying to stay in the race. And I think generally speaking, there's been really nothing. I mean, whenever he's on, he looks just like the same guy that had a 950 save percentage at the start of the year. That was unrealistic for him to keep that up. But I just don't think I haven't seen anything, from this year that would lead me to. I think one of the things that I've tried to be consistent about is it takes goalies, 150, 200 games or whatever in the NHL before we really know what they're going to be. And I don't think whatever he's going to play this year, 30 or 35 games, is going to move the needle one way or another. I think he is exactly what we thought he was last year, which is probably pretty good.
Corey, we have one question on the Facebook Live. I don't know if you have the answer to this, but I figured I'd give it a shot. From Steve Tartas.
Sure.
Any Zacha updates? Have you heard anything?
No.
No.
Short and sweet.
Right. No. Other than Lindy Ruff saying a couple times that he didn't think things were too serious, I haven't heard anything behind the scenes or from anybody. Yeah. There hasn't been any oh no, here comes the bad news or anything like that.
Okay.
But they took today off. They took today off. I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of update tomorrow morning before after the morning skate. But it was definitely a weird deal. He took the face off and just realized within a split second that something wasn't right. I have to feel just after watching that a few times, I felt like it had to be, he had to know something was not right. And he was well, I'm just going to, see if it's okay. And then took the face off and realized immediately that it was not okay. So he went straight to the bench.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, Corey, before I let you go, what do you have coming up on The Athletic? Any good articles you're writing right now?
Right. So there's, there'll be a story tomorrow that sort of looks at some stuff with Jack Hughes. Just some like sort of digging around with some things that are, there's been a lot of discourse about his goals and his points, and then also too like the Corsi and all that. This, what's really going on with him. So this is sort of just looking at some other aspects of his game that I think that haven't gotten a whole lot of attention yet. And there's also a story that sort of goes with the thing that I wrote today. That's like, this was like, let's look out 3 or 4 years in advance. And then the other part of that, it was going to be like a 2-part thing, but it got pushed back a little bit, probably maybe till next week, but is like, one of the things, obviously, like going off of what Tom Fitzgerald has said like half dozen times about, Jack and Nico are going to tell him when it's go time, essentially. So whenever that is, like sort of just going through year by year and looking at who might be available when it is time to, whether it's like a trade deadline or off season, but whenever it's time to add the types of players that they're going to need to put the finishing touches on the rebuild. So,
well, thank you, Corey, and also we will extend this invitation to you. We're back at it in a limited capacity, but we're back at Taj Lounge 973, which is formerly PJ Ryan's across the street, and come stop by for pregame, Corey. Lunch or dinner's on us. You have to come over.
Yeah, maybe. I'm trying to think what Sunday might be a good. I don't know what time the game is on Sunday. That's too far in advance for me. But
okay.
Game on Sunday, so that it could be at 1 or 5 or 7, but so yeah.
We'll figure out. We don't want to take you away from the media scrums or anything, but you gotta try the catfish, the fried catfish. They actually have fried catfish and fries, and I tried that, and I gotta tell you, their food is amazing. It's a completely different menu from the old PJ Ryan.
This is not a paid sponsorship, by the way.
Yeah,
this is not a paid sponsorship.
This is real.
Well, that's exciting because I mean I don't know I have joked with other writers around the league that I am like the unofficial mayor of Newark because I am constantly trying to get people who come in from out of town to eat other places besides Dinosaur Barbecue or Chipotle. And there are actually many great places to eat in Newark if you are willing to walk more than 50 feet from the arena. But yeah, this is also not a paid advertisement, but there's also a place that just opened like in the last couple of months. I mean, look, I've been going over there, and this has been a tough year for everyone. There are some of my favorite places to eat in Newark have not reopened yet, or maybe are never going to reopen. But there is a place on Broad Street, like basically right across from City Hall. Like if you sit by the window, you can literally see Prudential Center, called Cornbread. And they have, it's like, so it's soul food. Like they also have fried catfish, is one of their main things.
Okay.
And the food there, and obviously they have cornbread and other. That place I've eaten there a handful of times. It's sort of become kind of, Hobbies isn't open, and there's like an empanada place right around the corner from the arena that hasn't reopened. But I've been going to Cornbread, once a week pretty much during the season, and it's amazing. So.
Oh well, I didn't. Are you a foodie? Are you a foodie like me? Because we're all foodies on the podcast.
I mean, I think anybody who's ever looked at my Instagram page would probably agree with that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, and also, just again on a side note, are you traveling with the team at all this year, like down to Philadelphia at all?
No, I haven't. I've gone to travel. I'll be at the Garden tomorrow night because I'm going to walk there.
Okay.
But yeah, those are the only. I was actually just talking about that with someone the other day. I am gonna go out to the island at the end of the year. Partly just because like this is it for that old building.
Yeah.
Before they move to the new ones, but yeah. So those are probably the only road games for this year, and then we're everyone's sort of, waiting around and hoping, crossing fingers and toes that things are going to go back to normal for the most part next year. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, wherever we're at, we'll let you know, and we'll feed you. That's what we do on this podcast.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you, Corey.
That's Corey Masisak of The Athletic. Subscribe. I do. And I buy the yearly subscription.
Me too.
Because I'll tell you what, he brings a different perspective. He has a lot of analytics. He backs it up with analytics. And analytics is a big thing now. And long-form sports journalism is a lost art, but not Corey Masisak and Athletic. Remember those old articles with Rich Scher, Star Ledger?
Well, yeah, which is funny.
Yeah.
I growing up in the, I'm almost 40 years old, so I remember getting to Star Ledger and sitting down and reading the Star Ledger and reading just the paper, reading the newspaper, and just kind of like opening up and like going into the section and like looking at what's going on. And there's been many days, I will say, sat on the old porcelain throne where I was kind of thumbing through all the old articles. But nowadays it's at your fingertips. And if you're not subscribed to The Athletic, you're missing out. If you're not checking out Chris Ryan on NJ.com, you're missing out, because both of them, as a Devils fan, those are two of the most informed gentlemen that you can come across. And honestly, some of the best reads that you can come across as well, because it's not just like sometimes you look at an article and it's like very like, okay, I get the point. Let me get through this. But, Nick Villano, Chris Ryan, all these guys, it's so informative, but it's an easy, fun read. And that's one of the things I truly enjoy about this. Not a paid sponsorship, by the way. None of these guys are telling me or paying me to say any of this. That's just a fan speaking the truth.
And they should be paying you anyway.
They should be. Especially after that promotion right there, or the endorsement right there.
Yeah. Yeah. But in all honesty, just on a side note, thank you, Beer Baron, also known as Scott, for filling in last second. We had a lot of fun here. We had a lot of fun here, and we had two great guests. Chris Ryan, thank you. Corey Masisak, thank you for coming on. We got through it, Beer Baron. We absolutely got through it.
You know what? It's a different vibe. Nick, I tried my best to hold the mantle. I tried, and if I hopefully I did you all right, but thank you, Sam, for the call to bring me out of the bullpen, and for the opportunity to do the Wednesday night.
Squad? Do you know who else was on the taxi squad? We had I almost, if you said no, because Scotty's out in the
Dancing
West
Earl.
Coast. No, I almost got Chico Motormouth Resch to get on his phone.
You can't say that, because all the fans would have been like, now all the fans are going to be like, why the hell would you bring Beer Baron on when you could have had Chico Resch? I tell you.
Well,
but this is fun. This is fun.
I was trying to keep the podcast hour and 15 minutes or less.
Hey, listen, overtime is overtime, my friend. We don't get a chance. I you know what? And you guys get to do the post games and all that kind of stuff. I don't get a chance to do this often, so it's been nice to hang out tonight. Thank you again, Sam, for the opportunity as always. Thank you for everybody on Facebook Live. Thank you for everybody on YouTube Live and Twitter and Twitch and every platform that we're across. Thank you guys for chiming in, for adding to the show as always. Listen, we love all of our fans. The Let's Go Devils podcast every Sunday night at 9 o'clock on Facebook Live, Twitter, Twitch, all those different platforms. You have to understand, we look at every single comment, and we might not be able to say everything that we want to say, or we might not be able to comment all the time on what you're saying, but we love all of you, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So thank you for all you out there, and thank you for the State of the Fan address, because this has been quite fun tonight. So thank you guys, and thank you, Sam.
And pucksandpitchforks.com. If you haven't gone there, go there.
It's a must read. Must read.
Yep. Fan blogs, but real intelligent fan blogs. Also, because when you when you say fan blogs, it could be like, kind of like the old days when I used to make up rumors and
Sheldon Surrey to the Devils. Never forget.
But also, we're resuming Rangers Hate Week on the Let's Go Devils podcast forum. It was kind of hard to trash talk after a night like last night, but we will resume tomorrow. And also, Jalen, I will be at Taj Lounge 973 on Sunday. He asked about that. Also, I'd like to thank all the Devils fans that actually private messaged me about Dogecoin. I've been kind of promoting it because I just want Harris and Blitzer just to sell the team already. Sell it to us. I'm not paying you in cash. I'm paying you in cryptocurrency. So
hey, listen, we'll make it happen. Crazy things. Well, all of a sudden there's a Sam Wu statue right next to the Marty statue with your pads on, with your arm around Marty. Yeah, that's pretty much what we'll do.
Yeah, and you know what? Sillier things have happened.
This
is why you have
know.
to be nice to each other. You never burn bridges.
Hey,
because I'll tell you
be kind
what,
to everybody.
Yeah, because you never know. Matt Junio could be the next owner of the New Jersey Devils, and I could say, hey, I knew when Matt was in grad school. So you never know. Sillier things have happened. All right, so tomorrow we have a Woo Report, also some funny stuff I'm going to have to go over with Beer Baron after the podcast, and also post-game. Yeah, it's more like Beer Baron's the voice of reason and compliance, because some of the crazy ideas I have for Ranger Hate Week, we just want to make sure it's family friendly. Anyway, so long, everybody. Thank you very much. Till next time, let's go Devils.